Hey everybody, how are you doing? Thank you for stopping by my channel. Now before I actually get into this topic, I just wanted to share with you guys that this particular video is not meant to single certain people out or to bash anybody or to make anybody feel bad, and definitely is not meant to bring any type of tension between cultures or races. But I wanted to talk about this because a lot of people have been feeling a certain type of way about certain cultures of people and ethnic groups, and they feel that some of them don't tip or they tip poorly. And I can say this as an African American woman, that there are people that feel that African Americans either do not tip or they tip poorly. And I am not in any part of that majority or any part of that group of people, because I am a person that tips, especially when I go out to eat or if I order food, etc. Especially if I was provided good service, okay? But I wanted to talk about this real quickly because I have seen this over many, many years on the internet, and also I have heard conversations from people personally that they feel certain groups of people from a certain background are either cheap or they do not like to tip. Now this goes to people in the service industry, not necessarily just the gig economy, but also people that work in hospitality as well, such as hotels, the food industry, etc. Okay. Now, from my own personal experience, I have had situations to come up from certain groups of people that either tried to be really penny pinching or they didn't tip at all. But it would not be fair for me to say all of those types of people are like that. And let me give you some prime examples of some of the things that I've seen and I have heard from other people. There are people that feel that African Americans, Jews, Latinos, some wealthy people, and Indians are very tight with their money. And there are some that also feel that maybe even Asians, but I haven't really had a lot of interaction with Asian people, especially in the service industry, whether it was rideshare or food delivery or even grocery delivery for that matter, okay? But from my personal experience, I'm just going to share this. This is not true for all people, because even though some people belong to a certain bracket of backgrounds, it doesn't mean that everybody is like that, because everybody's different. However, for me personally, especially with me being here in Florida, we have a large Indian community. Maybe not as big as some places, but there's a lot of Indians here, okay? And when I say Indians, I mean like East Indians, or West Indians. I have been in the service industry for a long time, off and on, for the past maybe 10, 15 years, off and on. I want to say when it comes to that group, it may appear that a lot of them are like that as far as like penny pinching, or they don't want to tip, or they're always trying to get something for free. But that's not always the case, because I found that some of the people that are Indian have been very generous to me, especially when it comes to services. Like, they love to feed people. They're very hospitable, okay? Some of them might seem cheap, but it's not fair for me to say all of them are like that. That's why I say some, especially even us as African Americans. Let's talk about African Americans here for a second. It's unfortunate that you have some people from certain groups, not just us, but all groups of life, that may treat some people a certain type of way when it comes to the service industry, like they don't tip or they tip very poorly, and it makes all of us look bad, okay? Now, I have seen this out of my own eyes. I've seen this personally where I've been to really nice restaurants, and maybe it was like 4 or 5 African Americans at a table, and I've watched the server provide them great service, and I seen them, the group of African Americans, get up and laugh and leave and not tip the person. That has happened before. And so, but it's unfortunate that there are some that are like that, but we as African Americans are not like that. And I think that sometimes it might be easier for certain ethnic groups of people to talk about this, because I think that when people express how they feel about this openly, they might be labeled a racist or a bigot. And I can understand how some people feel, but at the same time, if you've had a bad experience with someone from a certain group of people, it doesn't mean like everybody's like that, okay? But I have seen that happen, to where I've seen a lot of blacks do that, where they would go to a restaurant, and as soon as it was time for them to tip or whatever, they got up and they left and they started laughing like it was funny. And when you tip people, that's part of their income, like that's part of their bag, that's how they make money. But it's unfortunate that you have people like that. But it doesn't mean that only blacks do that. You have other races that do that as well. Now, as far as like Jewish people, I have had a lot of encounters with Jewish people, especially here in Florida, because we have a lot of Jews here. I mean, they're everywhere, but it's just like, A lot of them are well-to-do, they're well off, but I can't honestly say that I have had poor experiences from receiving tips because I might not know that they're Jewish. Doesn't mean that they're not going to tip you either, okay? Same goes to wealthy people. There are a lot of wealthy people who tip very well. They treat everybody with respect. Now I was initially going to do this video at home over the weekend last week, but I just didn't really get into it. A lot of wealthy people tip, but at the same time, we can't say just because a person has a lot of money, then they should give out their money. But let's think about the service industry as a whole. Like, you're providing a service, okay? And especially if you provide a great service, you do deserve some type of compensation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's gonna feel the exact same way that you do. And it's unfortunate that there's a lot of people who spend a great deal of money on services, but they don't tip their driver, they don't tip the delivery person, etc. Even people that deliver pizzas, for instance, like from Pizza Hut, Domino's, Papa John's, etc., or even local pizza joints, sometimes they go through the same exact thing. They might get tips from people. But for me personally, like, I can't say everybody's the same, especially because I'm in the South, like I'm in Orlando, and even though people might not think Florida is Southern, it is. It's very country here. And so I have been to residences that were really country. Like, I don't want to say the word hick because I might offend some people, but it was really country, okay? I've seen people with rebel flags up there and I was very uncomfortable going, but some people that seem very country, believe it or not, were the ones that tipped me very, very well, surprisingly. I conducted a survey out of 61 votes. Now, this is the question that I asked. Let's talk about it. Over the years, I have heard conversations from people, as well as seen Facebook posts and social media posts about race and ethnicity when it comes to tipping for services. Many people have been hesitant to share their feelings when it comes to certain cultures, races, and even people of religious background not tipping. Some feel that African Americans, Jews, Latinos, Indians, and most wealthy people don't tip. Many people in the service industry, such as retail, hospitality, food, delivery, and rideshare, etc., and it also includes cleaning services, have stated that this is a pattern with certain ethnic groups or races that refuse to tip or leave poor tips. Many people feel that if they express this, they will be labeled a racist. What are your thoughts and why? Do you feel it is true that certain races, cultures, and religious groups tip poorly? Now, here are the results. 15% said yes. I do think certain races, cultures, etc. tip poorly. 2% said no. 70% said, I think it's a mindset of the person, not their race or culture. 7% said neutral, and the other 7% said unsure, undecided, or other. Now, there were several people who had commented on it, and they left some really good comments and some valid points, okay? And one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of bring this up is because I've seen this before, and I've seen some racial, stereotypical posts in some of these gig groups that, oh man, I delivered to a Jewish person or I delivered to an Indian and I'm sure I won't get a tip. And that is so wrong to say that. And it might have been like that. Like, I have seen people comment and say, hey, you know what, I delivered to a group of blacks and they didn't tip. And this is typical of some black people. Now, of course, some people got some shots fired at them and stuff like that. But some people were very open and honest, and they felt like, once again, certain groups of people do not tip or they leave very poor tips. Everybody is not the same. If you have experienced this from certain people of a certain background, it does not mean that everybody is like that, okay? I had many encounters where, I was doing some grocery delivery for Instacart, or I was doing food delivery, etc., and I wasn't tipped by someone that was white, and so you can't say everybody's like that. And at the same time, if you're going into a neighborhood that looks really run down, where it may seem like someone is poor, or it may seem like they're from the backwoods, it doesn't always necessarily mean that they won't tip either, because I've actually been tipped from people in the backwoods, surprisingly. I can say from my perspective as an African American, unfortunately, the majority of African Americans that I have encountered have not tipped for some reason. Unfortunately. And when I say not tipped, I mean not tipped as far as grocery delivery such as Instacart, food delivery such as Uber Eats or DoorDash. Well, I really can't say DoorDash because I really can't tell if they tipped or not. This is before they actually broke stuff down. Or maybe Postmates or Grubhub or something like that. And sometimes you might even have college students that don't tip. But I'm just talking about race. And I don't want you guys to feel like everybody is the same. Everybody's like that, because that is so not true. Some people were brought up a certain type of way to say, hey, save your money, don't spend it. Tipping is part of the help. That's what they do. And so they feel like you don't deserve a tip because you're the help. And even though it's your job and this is part of you making your income, that's how some people feel. And I don't want, like I said, I don't want to single some people out, but that's just how some people grew up. And it's unfortunately like they think like that, but I know it can feel uncomfortable, and especially depending on what your background is. And I think that a lot of Caucasians feel like they're under fire, because if they feel like that, or if they express that, then they're like, oh yeah, most people, they'll probably think, oh gosh, they're going to label me a racist. Everybody does not think the same. Everybody is not in the same bracket. Even though you might have the majority of a particular background of people that may have certain financial aspects about themselves, it doesn't mean necessarily that they are not going to tip you. It doesn't mean necessarily that they're stingy. It's just how some people think. Leave very poor tips. Maybe a bill came out to maybe $150 and they may only tip $3. I've had situations like that, but it wasn't like just from that group of people. I've had this from all types of people. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you guys in case you ever felt a certain type of way, and even have encountered that from certain groups of people, and you probably felt bad about thinking like that. Like, man, I've encountered this a lot from Jews, or I encountered this a lot from Hispanics, or black people, or wealthy people, or Indians, or Asians, or whatever. And so it doesn't make you a bad person if you felt like that, but don't think that all the time. I am a person that tips. I make sure that I do that, especially if a person provided good service. So definitely I'm not going to order something and not tip somebody. Okay, I know sometimes when customers use these apps, sometimes they act up, they don't work. They may leave a tip and you might think they didn't leave it, and of course, some of these companies, they may take the money. I mean, there's a whole lot of scenarios, especially as a server. You're face to face with some of these people, so you can't assume that a person is Jewish just by their facial features or whatever. But at the same time, you might encounter someone who's African American or Indian or something, and maybe as a server, you serve them, you provide a great service, and they get up and walk out and they'll leave you anything. But don't think that it's because of their race. It's probably just a person, because I've seen a lot of this online, and I think that a lot of people are trying to change their answer now to be like, oh no, it's not really the race, it's not the culture, because now people are trying to change things because they don't want to get into a big debate about race. I know people have different thoughts about this particular subject, and so it doesn't mean that you're a bad person expressing this, but I don't want people to feel like, oh gosh, if I say this, it makes me feel some type of way. But at the same time, don't put everybody in the same category, because everybody isn't the same. Okay, so thank you for stopping by my channel, guys. I appreciate it. I have more to come, and I have more topics to talk about. So thank you for keeping me in your prayers. I'll keep you in mind. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.